What's up everybody on YouTube? AJ Respect to discuss another video. And today we're going to be talking about the biggest takeaways from NFL Week 11. Wow, the season is going by fast, man. 7 weeks from now we'll be in the last week of the regular season, week 18, and then 8 weeks from now we'll be in Wild Card Weekend. Time moves by fast, but we have a lot of good matchups to talk about from NFL Week 11, particularly the first one between the Bills and the Chiefs. Always a classic good matchup seeing Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and the Bills won that game 30-21, but we all know that the Chiefs are undefeated against the Bills in the postseason, so that's where it matters most. Yes, Josh Allen and the Bills, they have a 4-1 record in the regular season against the Chiefs, but let's see, potentially if they play again in the playoffs, that'll be a good matchup. A lot of good potential playoff matchups in the AFC. Also switching gears to talking about the Steelers and Ravens game that took place. The Steelers won that game against the Ravens, a huge divisional matchup, and now Steelers are first in the AFC North, the 8-2 record. The Steelers have won 8 of the last 9 games against the Ravens too. That's a wild stat right there. Lamar Jackson is 1-4 in those matchups against the Steelers. I don't know, that defense is insane though, so we can see why the Ravens struggle so much against them. So that's a game to talk about right there. Even on Thursday Night Football, the matchup between the Eagles and the Commanders wasn't the greatest first half, but ended up picking up in the second half, and it was a really good game. And now the Eagles are on the leaderboard in the NFC East right now. And then also you got to talk about a game in the NFC West, a matchup between the Seahawks and the 49ers, and the Seahawks were able to win 20-17. Geno Smith hit the night celebration like Steph in the Bay Area. That's crazy. Really good win there. Both of those teams are now 5-5, and of course in the NFC West, the Cardinals, who had a bye week this week, are ahead of that division. So like I said, there's a lot of good matchups that took place in this week. We know some of these teams that are going to be contenders right now. There was also the matchup on Sunday Night Football between the Bengals and the Chargers, and Monday Night Football, the Battle of Texas. Not as nearly high stakes as we thought it would be before the season, but between the Cowboys and the Texans. So, man, it was a really good week, and I can't wait to talk about every single game individually. With that being said, though, guys, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. You know we post about here videos about the NBA, NFL, Marvel, DC, pop culture, cooking videos, shorts, reels, things of that nature. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss, and on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02. With that being said, let's talk about NFL Week 11. I mentioned it earlier, the Thursday Night Football game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. The Eagles did win 26-18, but it didn't start off as an electric game. A slow first half. The score was even 10-6 in the fourth quarter with Washington leading, but then the Eagles were able to start to get things together. And man, let's talk about Saquon Barkley real quick. He has legit had a Christian McCaffrey type of impact on this offense in Philadelphia. This team, of course, made the Super Bowl 2 years ago in 2022, and were really good offensively and defensively then. But this year in 2024, Saquon just takes them to new heights. And we know how great he was on the Giants, even though the team wasn't good and he just dealt with injuries sometimes. But he has really ascended himself this year, and a potential Offensive Player of the Year candidate. Had 26 carries for 146 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, including a rushing touchdown of 65 yards on a run that was insane. Cohesively as a unit, this team is playing really good, excellent football. Jalen Hurts also completed 18 out of his 28 passing attempts for 221 passing yards. He also had a rushing touchdown, of course, from the tush push and 39 rushing yards. This is a matchup we were looking forward to for sure, and they will see each other again in Washington in the weeks to come. But talking about the Commanders real quick, a lot of people are talking about Jaden Daniels hitting this rookie wall. We have to remember that he injured his ribs in the game earlier this season too, so that could be a factor too, but there's still no excuses. Completed 22 out of his 32 passing attempts for 191 passing yards, a touchdown and interception. The Commanders, they'll still make the playoffs, but it does look like the Eagles are in prime position to win the division, so the Commanders could be contending now for a wild card spot, but they're already like 2 years ahead of what we thought they would be anyway. So it's just a testament to how Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury offensively has transformed their offense, and the team overall has changed, and they got them a guy with Jaden Daniels at the quarterback position. But it's a good one for Philadelphia. They're looking really good. Shout out to Nick Sirianni, shout out to the whole squad. They're getting things right, and it's looking good in the city of brotherly love. I think it's safe to say that the Miami Dolphins are going to try to go on a little run here. They got a win over the Las Vegas Raiders 34-19 after beating the Rams in week 10 too. So a couple of wins now. After being 2-6, they're now 4-6. They have Tua back, and that's a huge reason why they're able to get some wins now. He completed 28 out of his 36 passing attempts, threw for 288 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Had an efficient game. Devon Achane had 73 rushing yards and a touchdown. Jonnu Smith played really good. Another utilized player that people didn't really see from this offense. Everyone thinks about Tyreek Hill, about Jalen Waddle, but Jonnu Smith had a really good game. 6 receptions for 101 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill 61 receiving yards and a touchdown. Just an all-around good game offensively and defensively for the Miami Dolphins. They're still way back in their division, and the Bills are going to win that division in the AFC East easily. But if they can go on a little winning streak here in Miami, they've already played the Bills twice, so if they can clean sweep or maybe only lose one more game, they could be 10-7 or 11-6 to finish out the season. That's a huge ask, a monumental task for sure, but anything's possible because this offense is super explosive when healthy. They just have to make things right. And for the Raiders, Gardner Minshew didn't have a bad game. Completed 30 out of his 43 passing attempts, 283 182 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. An efficient game, but we already knew with them that they were probably going to be outclassed in this matchup. The team just isn't good enough right now, but I will say a huge bright spot for this Raiders team, if there's been any this year, is Brock Bowers, rookie from Georgia, first round pick, had 13 receptions for 126 receiving yards and a touchdown. He's been great for this Raiders team, one of the best tight ends in the league already as a rookie, and that's a good sign. And hopefully for Raiders fans, you're hoping that you can get Shedeur Sanders in the 2025 draft to have a good connection between Sanders and Bowers, because this season has not been good by any means necessary. This game between the Saints and Browns wasn't pretty at all, and we're gonna move through it pretty quickly. Both of these teams are still gonna be top of the NFL draft, but the Saints were able to win in dominant fashion, winning 35-14. Browns are now 2-8, and the Saints are now 4-7. And this was a reunion game for Jameis Winston. Statistically, though, he played really good, completed 30 out of his 46 passing attempts, threw for 395 pass yards and 2 touchdowns. Besides his connection to Jerry Jeudy, who went off for 6 receptions and 142 receiving yards and a touchdown to Elijah Moore on 66 receiving yards, they really weren't able to get anything going. And we know how good that Saints defense is. They can start teeing off on teams. It's just really been the offense for them. It's kind of been like a Pittsburgh situation of sorts in New Orleans, but not necessarily the same, because they haven't sniffed the playoffs really, and they don't have a coach like Mike Tomlin, but they've always had a good defense the past really 5 to 6 years, to be honest with you. But Derek Carr had a really good game, completed 21 out of his 27 passing attempts, threw for 248 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Taysom Hill, rushing wise, had a dominant game, 7 carries for 138 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns, averaged almost 20 yards per carry. That's insane. So the Saints, they look good right now. They had a 7-game losing streak after starting off 2-0. Have had a couple wins the past couple of weeks, but still really don't take them serious in the NFC. Potentially try to contend for a wild card, because we can probably say safely that the Falcons are going to win the division, although they got smoked by the Denver Broncos, so I don't know. But yeah, the Saints won the game in the Browns. It's tank season. If you're a Jets fan, I'm sorry, but your season is over. The Indianapolis Colts, they beat the Jets 28-27 on essentially a game-winning drive by Anthony Richardson, who returned to start in this game. Shout out to him. After going through some adversity, people questioning if he potentially has what it takes to start in the league after he tapped out in that game against the Texans, and Richardson responded in good fashion, completed 20 out of his 30 passing attempts, threw for 272 passing yards and a touchdown, also had 32 rushing yards, connected with Josh Downs, connected with Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr. too as well. The Colts look really good in this game, and they're now 5-6 and have a chance in the AFC to be a wild card if they can continue to string wins together. That'll be an intriguing situation to watch there. But shout out to AR for getting things right in this game. Hopefully he can continue to do so, because I know people like Pat McAfee and other Colts fans will be excited if he is. But really, the main story right now is to talk about the New York Jets, man. I talked about how their season is over, and yeah, it is. They're 3-8 now. Had essentially AFC Championship or Super Bowl aspirations before the season started, and it has been a collateral mess. One interesting stat that I saw as well is that Aaron Rodgers has a lower winning percentage as the New York Jet than Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold. That's insane, guys. It's not good at all in New York, and the question is should they just blow everything up and just start from scratch? Because they've also kind of handicapped themselves future-wise too with this team, setting it up to win now. So that's just a huge question to have there. Aaron Rodgers, I'm not really even going to get into the stats too much with him. Threw for 184 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Not a bad game at all, but he's just not the same player, and that's okay. I just hate the expectations that people had about him being similar to a Tom Brady, being able to elevate a dominant defense at the age of 40 plus years old and leading him to a Super Bowl. It's just not the same for everybody. But yeah, that's what it is there, man. If you're a Jets fan, I feel bad, but I'm not too surprised though. And at this point, your season is over, and I wonder if they're going to start looking towards the future. Imagine being 8-2 and still being second in your division. That's a reality for the Minnesota Vikings right now, but they did get a good win against the Tennessee Titans, winning 23-13. Really expected this game to be more of a blowout, but they still took care of business and won by double digits, so that's a good thing for them. Sam Darnold completed 20 out of his 32 passing attempts, threw for 246 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Efficient game overall for him. He also had a rushing touchdown too, so 3 total touchdowns for Darnold. And then Justin Jefferson had 81 receiving yards on 6 receptions. Jordan Addison had a good game, 3 receptions for 61 receiving yards and a touchdown. So offensively and defensively playing really good football. Offensively, we know how Kevin O'Connell is going to have Sam Darnold and the crew playing, but defensively too, with Brian Flores, how he has really transformed this defense in Minnesota. It's been a testament. They forced Will Levis to throw an interception, and I will say he had an interception, but Will Levis didn't play a bad game. He completed 17 out of 31 passing attempts, had 295 passing yards and a touchdown, also had a 98, also threw a 98-yard touchdown to Nick Westbrook-Akine, who had 2 receptions for 117 receiving yards. So that was good for Tennessee. But if you're a Titans fan, I would say I would probably still look forward to the draft. I mean, you have a 2-8 record right now. Will Levis has had his moments too, but I would still probably look to potentially drafting a quarterback. It just depends on who's available, because like I talked about before and in previous videos, I think that Shedeur Sanders is a perfect fit for the Las Vegas Raiders. So you'll see who else you will potentially try to draft in Tennessee with quarterbacks. I mean, there's quarterbacks like Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, the list goes on, but I think Cam Ward would be a solid target if I was a Tennessee Titans fan, but I don't know. But it's a good win for Minnesota, and they're still looking like they're good in the mix, but the Lions, who we're going to talk about in a second, own that division for sure, and the NFC. The Green Bay Packers got their 11th straight divisional win over the Chicago Bears, winning 20-19. Won the game blocking a field goal that could have gotten the Bears their 5th win, but no Sirski, and the Green Bay Packers in that NFC North that I talked about a second ago with the Vikings and also the Lions, they're now 7-3 at the 3rd spot, which is crazy. It's just a testament to how good that division is. But the Chicago Bears are now 4-6. After having a record of 4-2, they have lost 4 straight. It's not looking good for the future of Matt Eberflus as head coach in Chicago. But I will say, if they do part ways with Matt Eberflus, they should look to reconnect Cliff Kingsbury and Caleb Williams together in the offseason in the future, because Cliff Kingsbury, he knows how Caleb Williams plays. Was there at USC last year. With him, he would be able to help unlock his game even more, like he has with Jaden Daniels. That would be a good target for the Chicago Bears, because they have a good team, especially with that defense, but not a team that does enough. And Caleb Williams has had a rough rookie year. It's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs. He did look better in this game against the Packers, though. Completed 23 out of his 31 passing attempts for 231 passing yards. No passing touchdowns, but he was more decisive, got the ball out quick too, so that was a good thing for their offense. And like I said, really, the Bears, they did enough to win, but the Packers defense and special teams executed on that blocked field goal, and it was a good execution from a better team. Jordan Love, he's been streaky at times this season, completed 13 out of his 17 passing attempts for 261 passing yards, a touchdown and interception. Josh Jacobs had a rushing touchdown on 76 rushing yards. Jordan Love also had a rushing touchdown too, so that was good balance there. And Christian Watson, though, that's someone to talk about for sure. Had 4 receptions for 150 receiving yards. A well-balanced game from the Green Bay Packers. Still think that they're fixtures in the NFC, but not on the level of a team like the Lions or the Eagles, or maybe even the Vikings in their own division. Only time will tell when they play again, but it's a good win for Green Bay and Pack Nation.
Zylstra, it's caught by Jamison Williams. There he goes. Foot race with Miller. Foot race with Savage. That is 6.
Now we can finally talk about the head division leaders in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions, who might have got Doug Peterson fired in this game. The Lions won 52-6, absolutely destroying teams this season in great fashion. Only had 7 points in the first quarter and then just really took off. In the second quarter, had 21 points to that, and then the second half had 24 extra points. So man, this offense is electric. And talk about Jared Goff right now. I know he had a rough game against the Houston Texans, throwing 5 interceptions, but he still had more passing touchdowns and incompletions this season, which is an insane stat as well. And in this game, he completed 24 out of his 29 passing attempts, 412 passing yards, and 4 touchdowns. Hooping, going crazy. Montgomery, rushing wise, had 2 rushing touchdowns on 75 rushing yards. Jameer Gibbs had 69 rushing yards for a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 11 receptions for 161 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Emerson Williams, 124 receiving yards on 4 receptions for a touchdown. Gibbs even had 54 receiving yards too. I mean, overall, this team was just able to spread things out and go against the Jaguars, who have been the most disappointing team, probably, if not one of them this season, and just killed their defense. It was insane to see. And of course, Trevor Lawrence didn't play in this game, still dealing with the injury. Mac Jones played in this game, and he played like you would expect Mac Jones to play. Completed 17 out of 29 passing attempts for 138 passing yards and an interception. Weren't able to get anything going. The biggest storyline is the future of the Jacksonville Jaguars, because you gave Trevor Lawrence that contract, and of course he's going to get absolved some blame because he didn't play in the past couple of games, but the season hasn't looked great at all with him in it, and it's just really eerie right now, because we can confidently say that the Jaguars are going to have a new coach in 2025, that they're going to need a lot of reconstruction down there. But the Lions, they are dangerous right now. The LA Rams beat the New England Patriots 28-22, and I will say Matthew Stafford, he had him in an absolute game. Completed 18 out of his 27 passing attempts for 295 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Before I get into further stats, it's crazy because the Rams, they'll look like a total juggernaut in one week, and in the next week they'll poop the bed like they did against the Dolphins. So it's really weird. In that Dolphins game, they didn't even score a touchdown if I recall correctly. They only had field goals. So that's interesting to me, but like I said, Matthew Stafford threw 4 touchdowns and was able to spread the ball out in a good manner. Puka Nacua had 7 receptions for 123 receiving yards and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp had 6 receptions for 106 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, and even Colby Parkinson had a touchdown as well too. So efficient football. Kyron Williams also had 86 rushing yards on 15 carries, and defensively they played good too. They turned Drake May over once, but overall Drake May did have a good game. He completed 30 out of his 40 passing attempts, threw for 282 passing yards and 2 touchdowns and that 1 interception I mentioned. Nothing too crazy there. The Patriots, like I say continuously about their team, they found their guy at quarterback, but They still have to fill in a lot of holes on their roster to get back to competing in the AFC, but they do have a bright future with 10 at the helm. But the Rams, they're even at 500 right now with a 5-5 record. They're going to try to contend with the 49ers, with the Cardinals, with the Seahawks for that NFC West crown, or even try to sneak into the playoffs as a wild card. So we'll see, but it's a good win for Los Angeles. Time to finally talk about this game, and I've been looking forward to breaking down this game between the Steelers and the Ravens. The Steelers won 18-16, and it was an absolute physical game, how it typically always is between the Ravens and the Steelers, a classic AFC North rivalry that came down to the end, and the Ravens had the opportunity to go for two and tie the game and go into overtime, but that Steelers defense, a constant theme, they shut the Ravens down when it mattered most, and they were able to win the game. And there were a couple of crucial late mistakes by Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson in a stretch of the game that could have changed things collaterally, but it didn't. And I will say for Russell Wilson, he has continued to play efficient football. Didn't throw any passing touchdowns, but had a good game overall besides the interception that he threw. Completed 23 at his 36 passing attempts, 205 passing yards. All of their points also only came from field goals too, so it wasn't nothing impressive, but it was a defensive masterclass by the Pittsburgh Steelers though. George Pickens had 8 receptions for 89 receiving yards. Najee Harris had 63 rushing yards, but really it's a testament to that defense. When that Derrick Henry fumble happened in the first quarter, that really just set the tone for the rest of the game. Low-key, the Baltimore Ravens, they showed some mirroring of how they performed in the AFC Championship game. Straying away from the running game, Derrick Henry also only had 13 rushes too, so that makes a difference as well when you aren't owning into the running game to make things easier for Lamar in the play action game. So there's some of that. You can blame some of the loss on 6 points going off the board from 2 missed Justin Tucker field goals, but at the end of the day, they still had the opportunity to tie the game in the fourth quarter and push it to overtime, but they weren't able to, and that's a testament to the dominant Steelers defense. The game was catered towards the type of brand of football that the Steelers like to play. They even turned Lamar Jackson over on a crazy interception that looked like it was going to be a huge game for Justice Hill, but the Steelers were able to get a huge turnover then, and like I said, they just controlled a lot of the game. And Lamar Jackson didn't have an efficient game. He's now 1-4 against the Steelers. In his career, he just continued to struggle against them, but we'll see when they play again later in the season. But he only completed 16 out of his 33 passing attempts for 207 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Derrick Henry had 65 rushing yards on 13 carries and a touchdown, but like I said, he had an early fumble that really kind of swung things in terms of the Steelers' favor, and that was his first fumble in 538 carries. That's insane. Yeah, the Steelers got a good win. They're now number 1 in the AFC North with an 8-2 record, and now the Baltimore Ravens have a 7-4 record. The Seahawks were able to get their get back against the 49ers after losing against them earlier in the year. The Seahawks won this game 20-17 in San Francisco. And like I talked about in the intro with the night celebration Geno Smith had, offensively and defensively, Seattle was able to get things going because they've been up and down since they started the season 3-0, but maybe this will be a step in the right direction for them. And shout out to Geno Smith. He was efficient in the game. He threw an interception, yes, but he completed 25 out of his 32 passing attempts, threw for 221 passing yards. Kenneth Walker had 54 rushing yards and a touchdown. Geno Smith also had a rushing touchdown too, so even though he didn't throw any passing touchdowns, he was still able to be effective regardless. And also shout out to Jackson Smith and Jigba. Had a huge game, 10 receptions for 110 receiving yards. I think he's been an underrated story in the NFL this year, and for the Seahawks particularly, as he has stepped up in his second season to be one of the key wide receivers for Seattle. And DK Metcalf had 7 receptions for 70 receiving yards. Just a good game for this team offensively and defensively. They turned over Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy was also dealing with some shoulder soreness too that he was playing through as well, but I mean, if you're on the field, you're going to be accounted for, and no one is going to give you that pass or excuse, so we can respect him for still playing. But the Seahawks defense were able to have his way with him in their offense. Yes, he completed 21 out of his 28 passing attempts, but he only threw for 159 passing yards and a touchdown and threw an interception. So that defense was playing really good against the 49ers offense, which we know it can be electric at times, but they're still slowly working back in Christian McCaffrey, who had 19 carries for 79 rushing yards. Also, Brock Purdy, he did have a rushing touchdown too, but passing wise, the Seattle Seahawks defense had their way, except for against Juwan Jennings, who had 10 receptions for 91 receiving yards and a touchdown. But also, you have to talk about how the 49ers were missing George Kittle in this game too, so that made a difference. We do also have to acknowledge, of course, Nick Bosa leaving the game with an aggravated hip injury. Hopefully it's not too serious for their sake because he is their best defensive player. I mean, some people can argue Fred Warner as well too, which is respectable, of course, but if Nick Bosa misses any duration of time, that would certainly hurt their defense. It's just interesting because I've said this in the past too, for the 49ers, yes, they've gotten to the Super Bowl 2 times in the past 5 years, but if you continue to knock at the door and won't win, it doesn't matter if you keep getting there. If you're not winning the Super Bowl, that's the ultimate goal, and it won't matter if you don't win it all. So they still have enough to win a division, I think, but the Cardinals are hot right now, and they had a bye week in week 11, but if they continue to play similarly to this, they definitely won't see themselves winning the division, and they might mess around and miss the playoffs if they don't get things going together. But the Seahawks, they look good in this game. This was a surprising outcome as the Denver Broncos Broncos absolutely bludgeoned the Atlanta Falcons, winning 38-6. Bo Nix went off. I would say this was easily his best game of his rookie year so far, and that's no slight to him because he's had a really good rookie year. I believe that in a year that has had Jaden Daniels play good football for most of the year, Bo Nix has certainly been the second best quarterback in this draft class so far, but only time will tell with that. But in this game, he completed 28 out of his 33 passing attempts, threw for 307 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Bo Nix and really just Denver's offense overall had their way against the Atlanta Falcons defense. Javonte Williams had a rushing touchdown, and multiple players had touchdowns. LaJordan Humphrey, Marvin Mims Jr., Troy Franklin, and Nate Adkins. Broncos were able to spread the ball out and distribute in an efficient manner. Bo Nix looked really good in this game. It's a testament to how Sean Payton is a really good coach. He's controversial at times, especially what he did with Russell Wilson in the 2023 season, but no one has expected the Broncos to play as good as they are, and right now they have a 6-5 record, over 500 still at this point in the season. That's an impressive feat. For the Falcons, they also now have a 6-5 record, and while they are division leaders in the NFC South right now, this was a surprising and perplexing loss, I would say, at least in the way that they lost. I think people have to recognize how good the Broncos defense is. There were a lot of question marks after the Broncos defense was dominated against the Baltimore Ravens a few weeks ago, but they stepped into the challenge against the Falcons team that has looked good overall offensively for the most part of this season, limiting Kirk Cousins to only throw for 173 passing yards and throw an interception and no passing touchdowns. Bijan Robinson also only had 35 rushing yards. Drake London only had 61 receiving yards. So the Broncos, they look really good, and they'll be a contender for a wild card in the AFC. That division in the AFC West now surprisingly is looking really good. Of course, with the Chiefs being as dominant as they are, even though they lost against the Bills, and also the Chargers, how good they look this year, how John Harbaugh has transformed this team. So the AFC West, they look nice right now, and it's a good one for Denver. Now time to talk about arguably the game of the week. Actually, yeah, easily the game of the week. The matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, as the Buffalo Bills were able to hand the Chiefs their first loss of the season, winning 30-21. These two teams, classic rivals for sure. Even though Kansas City has dominated the matchup in the playoffs, the Bills have their number in the regular season, and it'll be interesting to see if in the near future, if the Bills can translate that regular season success into playoff success against the Chiefs, but only time will tell. Josh Allen, he had a really good game overall. Threw for 262 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception, completing 27 out of his 40 attempts. Also rushing wise though, we know how dynamic of a runner he is at the quarterback position, how athletic he is. Had 12 carries for 55 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown that really sealed the game at the end. A great call to go for it on 4th down from head coach Sean McDermott to really put the game away, because you don't want to kick a field goal there and only go up by 5 and then leave Patrick Mahomes the ball with 2+ minutes left in the game. So that was a smart decision and a good play call. James Cook didn't have the most rushing yards in this game, only had 20 rushing yards, but had 2 touchdowns that were effective. Khalil Shakir, we have to talk about how he's been utilized in this offense efficiently too. Same thing goes for Amari Cooper, who only had 55 receiving yards, but had 2 key receptions when they needed it. So this Bills team, a lot of people thought they were going to fall off with all the roster turnover that they had offensively and defensively, trading away Diggs, getting rid of Foyer, Hyde, all players of that nature. Well, this team is still really good, and they have a 9-2 record right now going into the bye week. And for the Chiefs, we knew that this loss was inevitable. The goal for them really isn't to go undefeated, it's to be the first team in NFL history to three-peat, but I will say they've won a lot of games narrowly this year too, and we'll wonder how that'll continue the trend in the rest of the season. Patrick Mahomes did not have a good game at all, I would say. He threw an interception on the first drive, which helped prompt the Bills to get ahead early and really not look back, even though the Chiefs did end up taking the lead in the game too, but the Bills were able to still dictate their terms of the game. Patrick Mahomes threw for 196 passing yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Not really too much to talk about statistically wise from the Chiefs. I mean, Xavier Worthy had 61 receiving yards and a touchdown too. We know that both of these teams are championship contenders, so like I said, hopefully we can see this again in the playoffs like we saw last year too, and maybe Buffalo will win, but it's a good win for Buffalo, and for the Chiefs, it's nothing to be mad about. You knew this was probably inevitable, and the last time they lost was Christmas last year, so you almost went 11 full months without a loss. That's pretty impressive. I think it's safe to say that Josh Allen should be the 2024 MVP favorite so far. It had been Lamar Jackson for most of the duration of this season, but a performance against the Steelers like he had, and really the Bills having a 9-2 record while the Ravens have a 7-4 record, I think puts Josh Allen as the clear favorite right now. You also have to allocate for a player like Jared Goff too, but Josh Allen, he has been cooking this season, and like I said, people didn't expect the Bills to still be a really good team or a championship contender, but because of Josh Allen, they still look really dangerous. Mind you, also Josh Allen was missing 2 of his key weapons in Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman, 2 who were out for this game against Kansas City. So it's just a testament to how by committee every player steps up in their role, and that's why adding Amari Cooper was so essential this season too. This game was a really good game, well, unless you're a Bengals fan. But anyways, the Los Angeles Chargers defeated the Cincinnati Bengals, winning 34-27 on Sunday Night Football. The Chargers now have a 7-3 record, and now Cincinnati, despite having Jamar Chase, who could potentially win the Triple Crown this year, despite Joe Burrow, who has had an MVP caliber season, they have a 4-7 record right now, and it's ugly in Cincinnati because the offense is so explosive, so dominant. Even T. Higgins had a great game too, but the defense still couldn't hold up in the first half. They were down early, and the Bengals, they were able to make a second half effort, and it looked like the Chargers were going to have a Chargers type of collapse, but that final drive the Chargers had really helped propel them to win win the game, especially off of a J.K. Dobbins touchdown. And you have to talk about the Chargers team more right now, especially this season. Harbaugh has really transformed that team and honed into his identity of playing physical football, really changing the culture there. Justin Herbert had a really good game, not just passing wise, but also in the running game too. He rushed for 5 carries and 65 rushing yards, but of course didn't have the best completion rate, completing only 17 out of 36 passing attempts. That's kind of credited to a lackluster second half the Chargers offense had, but he threw for 297 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins had 2 rushing touchdowns, and a shout out to rookie Lat McConkey. He's been playing really good and efficient in this offense. Had 6 receptions for 123 receiving yards. Will Disley had a receiving touchdown, and Quentin Johnson had a receiving touchdown too. So the Chargers have multiple weapons, and they've been able to distribute well offensively, but defensively too. That's been the story. Even without Khalil Mack, the Chargers still had a good game defensively, of course, until the second half, but overall they were still able to make the stops when they needed to. And for the Bengals, man, I can go through the stats. Like I said, Jamar Chase, he didn't have 200 plus receiving yards like he did in the game against the Ravens, but he still had 2 receiving touchdowns on 7 receptions for 75 receiving yards. And I mentioned T. Higgins had 9 receptions for 148 receiving yards and touchdown too. And it's crazy, Joe Burrow also threw for 356 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and still they weren't able to win the game. It's just really tough. And you can talk about the slow starts with the Bengals, which is a travesty in my opinion. People have to stop making excuses for that, because you can't continue to dig yourself into a hole as a team and expect to win a million games in a row and make the playoffs every single season. But beyond that, it just sucks because Joe Burrow, he has had 4 games where he's had 300 plus passing yards and 3 touchdowns, and they still lost those games. So it's very gross if you're a Bengals fan. If you love watching football, it's gonna suck because there's a good chance that the Bengals will miss the playoffs unless they're able to get on a huge hot streak and potentially go 10-7, but that will require them winning 6 games in a row. So that's a lot to ask for the Chargers. I think they're one of the biggest underrated stories in the league this season, and it's a good win for Bolt Nation. So I already promised in the previous week not to talk too long about Cowboys games from now on, and this is coming from a Cowboys fan. So first I'm going to analyze the game and then just talk about things from my perspective too, because I do have some things to say, but like I said, it's not going to be too long. The Texans won in a blowout, winning 34-10. Not surprised at all. Are we really? We can go through the stats real quick. Joe Mixon had a really good game for the Texans, 20 carries for 109 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Also had 44 receiving yards as well, 2 on 2 receptions. This game also saw the return of Nico Collins, who had 4 receptions for 54 receiving yards. Tank Dell also had the exact same stat line to Nico, ironically, with 4 receptions and 54 receiving yards too. And CJ Stroud threw for 257 passing yards, no touchdowns, threw an interception, had 26 rushing yards, completed 23 out of his 34 passing attempts, but just a good game overall. And really the main headline for the Texans is their defense. They've been the one consistent factor throughout this whole season. They were able to force an interception and a scoop and score touchdown from the Cowboys in this game, so they're just continue to be dominant, and that's the leading strength right now of the team. Even though their offense has spurts at times, but they haven't been able to get things going, but we know the potential that their offense does have. For the Texans, it was an easy, dominant, get-right win for them. It's nothing too much to be said about that. They moved to a 7-4 record, and they're going to look to try to finish off strong going into the AFC playoffs and winning the AFC South. But about the Cowboys real quick, it's hard to watch them. We already know this. Like I said, I am a fan of the team, but in saying embrace the tank, there's nothing to play for. Unwatchable at times. They kept things competitive for a while going into the second half, but we knew the inevitable was set in, and they're just not a good team. What it is this season, and I've accepted that a while ago. So yeah, especially with Dak being hurt, so many different factors, and yeah, there's a lot of injuries. I'm not gonna make excuses for that, but let me just be a fan real quick, guys. I'm done being a reporter commentator right now. Bro, y'all Texans fans are so lame, dog. Oh my gosh, don't get me started. This was y'all's Super Bowl. Regardless of what happened in this game, y'all will forever be little bro. I have people, of course, trying to say stuff to me, tagging me in stories and things like that. I'm not gonna say anything because it's just a waste of energy, but I will say something real quick. Everyone talks about how it's been forever since the Cowboys won a Super Bowl, that they're irrelevant and always losing the first round. Well, first of all, the Texans still haven't been to a conference championship in their existence, and they've existed since my whole life because the Texans were created in 2002. That's when I was born. And also, people like to say that, oh, we're still a young franchise. Well, the Cowboys won a Super Bowl in their 12th season of existence, like the Texans winning a Super Bowl in 2014. So yeah, but anyways, I'm done talking about that. Like I said, it's a good win for y'all Texans fans, but like I said, y'all will forever be little bro. So yeah guys, those are pretty much my biggest takeaways from NFL week 11. Let me know your favorite games that take place in the comments down below. If I had to rank the top 5 NFL teams right now so far, I would for sure say the Lions at number 1, Bills at number 2. I still think the Chiefs are top 3, so I'll put the Chiefs there. The Steelers, and then the Eagles. I know that might be controversial of a list to some of y'all. Let me know if y'all agree or disagree, but I think that's an accurate depiction of the best teams in the NFL right now so far. But y'all let me know in the comments down below. The season has been so good, and we're getting ready for the stretch run. It's going to be an amazing finish. I appreciate you guys watching. Always make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss. Also on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for cooking videos, shorts, reels. More content is on the way, guys. Y'all just stay tuned. Y'all are loved. Y'all have purpose. You matter. God loves you. You are created here in this specific moment for a reason, not my mistake. not by accident, not by coincidence. Y'all have a good one. Be blessed and keep being lit.